This is the Answer Key Notes video for Chapter 3, Lesson 3. 1. Dusty's earnings vary directly with the number of papers he delivers. The relationship is shown in the graph below. Determine the amount that Dusty earns for each paper he delivers. So I have to figure out the cost per newspaper. So I can do that knowing that this is a direct variation by looking at the point, let's say 4, 2. And so if I'm looking at the y over the x, which would be 2 over 4, then I can see that my direct variation simplifies to 1/2. So I can write y equals 1/2 x. So what does that 1/2 mean? That means half of $1, so it's 50 cents per newspaper. Number 2, the Thompson family is buying a car that can travel 70 miles on 2 gallons of gas. Assume that the distance traveled in miles, y, varies directly with the amount of gas used, x. This can be represented by y equals 35x. Graph the equation on the coordinate plane. How many miles does the car get per gallon of gas? As I look at the graph, I see the number of gallons of gas is the x value, and the distance driven is the y value. So I can write 70 miles in 2 gallons as my first coordinate. So 2 gallons, looking at the x, would be 2 to 70. And then my variation would be y equals 35x. So how many miles does the car get per gallon of gas? I would look if this was 1 and then 70, half of 70 is 35. It would be 35 miles per gallon. That sounds like some pretty good gas mileage. I can also find that by taking 70, which is my y value, over 2, which is my x value. 70 divided by 2 is 35, which is where they got this number from. Number 3, Tom was comparing computer repair companies. The cost y for computer access for x hours is shown in the graph. The cost for computers R Us can be represented by the equation y equals 23.5x. Which company's repair price is lower? Explain. Looking at the graph, I see that this one, which is computer access, is $50 in 2 hours. So 50 over 2, which is 25. So that one would be y equals 25x. And the computers R Us is $23.50 x. So what company's repair price is lower? Computers R Us is lower. Number 4, the weight of an object on Mars varies directly with its weight on Earth. An object that weighs 50 pounds on Mars weighs 150 pounds on Earth. If an object weighs 120 pounds on Earth, write and solve a direct variation equation to find how much an object would weigh on Mars. I'm going to have Earth be my x value and Mars be my y value. So if I'm finding the direct variation, I need to put my y over my x. So my y will be 50 over my Earth value of 150, which is also my x value. So 150, or 50 divided by 150 is 5 over 15, which is 1 over 3. So my equation of my direct variation equation would be y equals 1/3 x. Now I have to figure out how much an object would weigh on Mars if it weighs 120 pounds on Earth. So since Earth is my x value, I can substitute in 120 pounds and multiply it by 1/3 to get my y value, which is my weight on Mars. 120 times 1/3 is 40. So on Mars, the 120-pound object would weigh 40 pounds. Determine whether each linear function is a direct variation. If so, state the constant of variation. If not, explain why not. In order for something to be a direct variation or to have a direct variation, the ratios of y to x all need to be equal. So for number 5, if 20 over 5 equals 4, 24 over 6 needs to equal 4, which it does. 28 over 7 equals 4, and 32 over 8 also equals 4. So for number 5, answering the question, determine whether each linear function is a direct variation. Number 5 is yes, it is a direct variation, and the constant of variation is 4, because y over x is always equal to 4. So I wrote $4 profit per photo. For number 6, I'm looking at the ratio between y and x. So if 5 over 10, that equals 1/2, the rest of these have to equal 1/2. So does 6 over 11 equal 1/2? No, it does not equal 1/2. Does 7 over 12 equal 1/2? Nope. That means that no, there is not a direct variation, if not y, because the ratios are not equivalent. So I can box in my answers. And moving on to the next page. Number 7. The number of centimeters varies directly with the number of inches. Find the measure of an object in centimeters if it is 50 inches long. Let's first find the direct variation of y to x. So let's take 15/24 over 6. So my direct variation is y equals 2 54/100 x. So now if I substitute in 50 for x, I can multiply 2.54 times 50 to figure out the measure of an object in centimeters if it's 50 inches long. So after doing some multiplication on the side, I see that 2.54 times 50 is 127. So with 50 inches long, that would equal 127 centimeters. Persevere with problems. If y varies directly with x, write an equation for the direct variation. Then find each value. So we're always going to write y over x for all of these, so I'm going to write it in now. And then for number 8, it's negative 12 over 9. So 12 over 9 is 4 over 3, and it's a negative. So y is going to equal negative 4 over 3x. And then if I substituted a negative 4, I would get y equals negative 4/3 times negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, so I would get 16 over 3. I can simplify 16 over 3 to a mixed number. 3 goes into 16 5 times with 1/3 left over, so it's 5 1/3. For number 9, I'm going to write y, which is 8, over x, which is 10. So 8 over 10 simplifies to 4 over 5. So my direct variation equation would be y equals 4/5 x. And if I were to substitute in 20 for x, I would get y equals 4/5 times 20. I know that 20 and 5 will share a factor of 5. So 4 times 4 equals 16. So y equals 16. Okay, next problem, number 10. If y is equal to negative 6 over negative 14, I can simplify that to a positive number. And they both have a factor of 2, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So my direct variation equation would be y equals 3 over 7x. And then if I substitute in negative 4 for y, then it would be negative 4 equals 3/7 x. And then I would multiply by the multiplicative inverse of 3/7 on both sides. Negative 4 times 7 is negative 28 over 3. So 3 goes into negative 28 9 times with 1 left over, so it's negative 9 1/3. 18. The table shows the amount of time a delivery truck has been driving and the distance traveled. The total distance traveled is a direct variation of the number of hours. Use the model below to find the slope. So using the model below, I can write 275 minus 110 over 5 minus 2. I need to make sure that I'm putting my y values on top and my x values on the bottom of the equation. So 275 minus 110 is 165. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. So 165 divided by 3 is the direct variation. So the direct variation is y equals 53x. Number 19, students in a science class recorded lengths of a stretched spring as shown in the table. Determine if each statement is true or false. So looking at the table, I see the length of the stretched spring, that's the title. And then we've got the distance stretched, x in centimeters, and the mass in grams, y. So when it's stretched 2 centimeters, it's 12 grams. When it's stretched 9 centimeters, it's 54 grams. So the relationship represents a constant rate of change. I need to decide that if it does. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 30 divided by 5 is 6, 54 divided by 9 is 6, and 72 divided by 12 is also 6. And I see that it passes through 0, 0, which is the origin. So if it passes through the origin and it has a constant rate of change, that means that it's proportional, but yes, it has a constant rate of change. The slope of the relationship is 6 grams per centimeter. That's true. And the equation that represents the relationship is y equals x plus 10. False, that doesn't make sense. It would be y equals 6x. This concludes the homework answer key for Chapter 3, Lesson 3.